1983, in Lebanon, two boys were told to finish their chores, so they went out to feed the chickens. While feeding the chickens, they see a fighter jet conducting an airstrike. They saw a town close by get hit, and then the jet flew towards them, and they were also hit. Present day, we see Jack Rhines, one of the MCs, rowing before he starts his day. Jack rides his bike to work, but nearly gets hit. Jack works for the CIA at CTC Terror Finance and Arms Division. Meanwhile, James Guerrero, the other MC, is waiting to meet his boss Nathan, and when they meet, they talk about James's vacation. James was demoted from chief of station in Karachi and was sent to finance department for a second chance. But not a lot of people felt that James deserved it because they wanted him gone. Nathan gives James a warning not to mess things up before James heads out. James walks into the meeting where Jack is at and announces that he's the new chief. James asks everyone to introduce themselves, but when it's Jack's turn, James asks for more detail on what Jack is working on. Jack states that there are several transactions with red flags in Yemen, and he has a theory that the person is a high-level target and his name is Suleiman, aka Musa bin Salman, and James jokes about having a brand new bin Laden on his first day. We go to Syria where a man is looking for Suleiman, but Suleiman's wife, Hanabi Suleiman, tells him that he's dealing with business at the moment. The man tells them that they'll be staying over, and she wants to see Suleiman. Joe calls Jack and wants to talk with him privately, but not over the phone due to concerns, and Jack agrees to it. In the early morning, Jack is having some flashback of the battlefield, so he just goes to work earlier. After finding something, Jack tells James that he found a new shell company, and in the last 8 days, they totaled $9 million of transactions. Jack just hopes to freeze the accounts, but James turns it down because he thinks Jack isn't there yet. Jack goes behind James's judgment and asks Teresa, who is in the treasury, to write a démarche for Jack to freeze up the account. Pete calls James about the démarche that was ordered by Teresa, and James knew it was Jack's doing. James calls Jack to his office. They have an argument about freezing the accounts because they both have different objectives. Jack wants to prevent another 9/11, while James wants to wrap up the whole network and tells Jack to get out. Hanan offers Answer, one of the men that are staying over, some tea while they are working. While the kids are playing, Hanan tells the kids to wash up and sees Answer and his men loading a truck with a box and sending it off. At Yemen, CIA operatives named Matthijs are watching and following the bank manager. The bank manager meets with two men, and Matthijs's team sets up around the men, find out what they're up to, and to see if they need to be taken out. Due to not being able to hear them, they choose to silently take them in. Back at the CIA, James is going through Jack's personal file and finds out he is the lone survivor out of 12 Marines from a helicopter crash. Pete calls James again about something unbelievable. At the birthday party, Joe asks Jack what the State Department is saying about North Korea so Joe can invest and make some money. But Jack shuts him down. Joe walks off after being turned down, and Jack meets with Joe's daughter, Kathy. They were hitting it off until a helicopter interrupted them, and Jack was taken away by the Coast Guard. Once they land, Jack meets with James, and James tells Jack that he has SAD to watch the bank and didn't tell this to Jack because he didn't know Jack yet. So they head out to Yemen to help interrogate the two captors. The two captors are Omar, a businessman, and Sofan, a bodyguard. Jack asked if they had a phone, and when he called himself, he found out that it's the same number as the transfers. So they move Omar to a bigger room to interrogate him. Some cars roll up to the army base to make a deal to bring the dead bodies from the airstrikes, and the army brings the bodies to be ID'd. One of the dead bodies was still alive and took out a gun. Meanwhile, Jack gives Sofan some food and water and questions him because Sofan's name is Lebanese. Jack asks about Omar, then asks if Sofan has ever heard the name Suleiman, but Sofan tells Jack to be more specific. Another car pulls up and gets gunned down for getting way too close. The car blows up, causing a breach to the gate, and the base is under attack. The guy that snuck in kills Omar and tries to free Sofan. When they open the door, Jack hides behind the door, but Sofan warns the gunmen, and the fight for their lives happens. They are in a stalemate when Jack holds up a grenade, unpinned, and the gunman is pointing a gun at Jack. Jack finds out Sofan is really Suleiman, and Suleiman leaves with the gunman. Matthijs gets into an ACP, pushes back the attackers, while Suleiman escapes, and the attackers also leave. We get a flashback to 1983 after the airstrike. The two boys surviving the airstrike, and now the present day. Two brothers hugging it out while they escape. In Paris, a priest was stabbed and his belongings was taken by two men. Back at the CIA, they are in a meeting watching the fight between Jack and Suleiman and his brother, Ali. They think Suleiman is part of ISIS, but Jack claims Suleiman isn't anymore. Nathan left CTC Europe to oversee the Suleiman case and not TFAD. At the port of Yemen, Suleiman sends Ali to a mission in France because he only trusts his brother. Jack gets his back checked up, and after that, he visits Kathy and asks her out on a date. Back at the office, James gives Jack Jack Suleiman's phone and hope Jack can get it open. Jack gets called by Nathan to help him out on the case, but Jack wants time to think about it. Jack and James work on cracking the phone pin, but finds a clue when Suleiman was arrested in France. They bring this to Shelby and tell Shelby they want to check this out. Ali meets a man in France, and the man gives Ali a bag full of SIM cards. Jack, James, and Matthijs arrives in France and are greeted by Sandrine. She also warns them to follow the rules. They are about to make a house bust where Ali is at, but the children at the front alerts Ali that the SWAT team is there. Ali makes one of them a suicide bomber, but before the SWAT goes in to breach the door, they are shot at by Ali's men, and a gunfight begins. Ali escapes, but is found out by Jack when he spots bloodstain on the railing and chases after Ali. The girl wearing the suicide bomb tries to warn the SWAT team, but one of the SWAT guys shot her, releasing the bomb, and it goes off. When the bomb goes off, Ali escapes within the crowd. After the explosion, they canvass the area and find out they are using the SIM cards to send money. They send units to the train station to look for Ali, but he is nowhere to be found. Jack identifies Ali as the suspect who escaped from him during the chase, so they go to the Muslim area to search for him. On the way there, Jack has no clue why Suleiman would throw away his achievements, but it is due to the French culture being non-inclusive. Back in Syria, a man is praying with his son and goes off to work. On his way, he gets hit by a drone strike, killing him on the spot. Once Victor finishes his mission, he goes home to sleep, but he isn't able to, so he goes to the casino. Victor would meet Stanley and Blanche and won big during his time there. When he went home, he brought Stanley and Blanche to his house to celebrate his win streak. Blanche was throwing herself onto Victor and Stanley just let them continue. Victor and Blanche bang it out while Stanley watches them on the side. Once they were done, Stanley beats Victor like 50 Shades of Grey and leaves. Ali is woken up by the kids and Omer shows Ali an old drawing of his. Then he plays a game to message his brother about his situation, and Suleiman tells him to leave no witnesses behind. On the other side, Uncle Fatih gives Hannah their passport because he cares for the children. She hides the passport, but Yazid notices her sneaking around. Then Suleiman tells his kids how he met Hanan and burns the passport she hid away. When Jack and the others arrive at the Muslim area, they start asking around, while James goes to the mosque to ask about Ali. He sees a boy leaving in a hurry after seeing Ali's photo profile, and James talks to the boy. The boy talks and they raid the house to find Ali gone. They question Omer, but he doesn't answer. Then the kids talk about a game they don't play, and Jack finds out Ali was playing the game. They find out Omer lent his car to Ali, so they track the car. They want to intercept him, but Jack wants to know who he's meeting because Suleiman can harm way more people. Later, Hanan puts on her jewelry and takes her children out, but Samir doesn't want to go and snitches on them. So she runs away with her daughters and drives off. The car breaks down, so they walk to a town close by. They take a break to buy supplies, but Sarah spots one of her dad's men and runs away, but they are spotted. They catch them and Yazid shoots Fatih. Then Yazid has his way with Hanan, but she is able to get away from him. Once Victor sees a clear shot, he takes the shot while ignoring the commander. Hanan survives the blast and drives off. After losing his wife, Suleiman would speak with Al Radwan to buy the prisoners he captured. Once he loads up the prisoners, he doesn't pay Al Radwan, but gives it to his men who hasn't been paid in a long time, and his men turn against him. He takes everyone back to his compound and locks up the prisoners. After he beats Al Radwan to get his old subordinates' loyalty, Suleiman would lock up Al Radwan with the other prisoners. On the other side, Jack and the others follow Ali and tries to prevent anyone to get into contact with him to minimize casualties. Ali is low on gas and his wounds open up, so he goes to a gas station. During the car ride, Sandrine helps Jack make his move on Kathy. On the other side, Kathy doesn't think Jack is her type, but her coworker tells her to take a chance. After following Ali for a while, they also run low on gas, so Sandrine orders some men to check on the ski resort while they fill up on supplies. On James' side, they find Ali's car with no one inside, and he noticed Ali switch cars. They radio to Sandrine, but no one was in the car, but Jack noticed a stolen car. Ali comes out from the washroom and was about to shoot Jack, but Sandrine calls out to Jack before he could shoot. A shootout happens and a cop shoots Sandrine because he doesn't know about the operation. Ali shoots the cop and looks for Jack after. Jack sneaks into the car to grab his gun, and they have another shootout while Ali runs off to the woods. Jack follows after him to an abandoned shed and goes in. A bird takes his attention and Ali takes this opportunity to tackle him down. Jack hits his injury to get him off and grabs his gun to get the high ground. Jack asks where the attack is, but Ali reaches for his gun, so Jack had no choice but to end him. When Jack goes back, he finds Sandrine dead, and after the operation, they go back to America. Jack gets the green light from Kathy and they go on a date. They have a great time during their date, and Jack takes Kathy home afterwards. Kathy doesn't want to end the date, so she invites him in to continue. It gets heated and they start making out. Next thing you know it, they're doing the deed. The next morning, a funeral is held for Father Joseph, and some men are assembling a chemical bomb. They ready the bomb inside the church and leave to lock the door to set off the bomb. People start rushing to the door and starts dropping like flies. Later that day, people in hazmat suits see the outcome of the massacre, and it is reported on the news worldwide. Suleiman takes responsibility for this act and announces more will come. Jack shows James the aftermath of the attack and blames himself for not being able to prevent it because his brother knew everything. James tells him not to blame himself because there was nothing he could have done to prevent it. Jack noticed Suleiman knew the church was going to be full because of the funeral and tells James about it. In Turkey, Hanan and her daughters arrive at the refugee camp and hope to go to Europe, but the men tell them to go back because of the Paris attack. Hanan tries to seek political asylum by giving up Suleiman, but she didn't because her son is still there and left. A friend gives information about Hannah to Layla, and she informs Jack about it. Jack wants more information and goes back to his date. Kathy wants to keep it casual, and Jack is surprisingly okay with it. In Syria, Suleiman has his men in training, and he asks about his family, but nothing comes up. He sees a man in dirty rags, so he lets him wash up and gives him new clothes. Then we get a flashback when he was younger preparing for an interview and failed because of his race. When he returns, he scares Ali and Ali shows him a gun. They go to a park to talk about the interview, but two cops show up because they see Ali smoking. The cops pat Ali down and Suleiman attacks them because he knew Ali had a gun. Ali got away, but Suleiman was sent to prison and Ali would visit him there. When Suleiman was in prison, he felt free and a sense of belonging. He promised Ali once he's out, things will change. During the CIA meeting, Nate briefs everyone about the attackers, and Mr. Secretary, known as Trent, thinks it's a French problem, but James thinks it's the West problem. When they were talking, Jack had an idea by using the game to get Suleiman. On the news, they are still looking for Ali, so Suleiman gets people to look for him. Then he tells Dr. Daniel Nagler to make a list of what they need, and they will get it. Back at work, Jack uses the game to get Suleiman to send people to pick up Ali, but it's an ambush for them. Abraham tries to track their IP address to see if it's Ali, but they were prepared for that in advance. Then Suleiman asks his own question to test them, and they luckily got the question right. Unfortunately, he had one more and they failed it. So Suleiman ends the rescue mission, but Jack doesn't give up and baits Suleiman with Hanan. They get confirmation Hanan is in the refugee camp and Nate orders them to find her, so Jack and James flies out. After Hanan left, she went to look for Sadik to get him to smuggle her family to Europe, but it costs a lot of jewelry for 3 people. Later that night, Sadik is taken to speak with someone, and this person turned out to be Yazid, who didn't die from the airstrike. Hanan and her daughter gets on a truck and sets off on their journey. 6 months earlier in Liberia, 2 men dug up a burial site and bagged up a body from an Ebola grave site. Back to the present, Jack and James land in Turkey greeted by Lance, who will get them access to the sex trafficking site. Tony greets them with tea, but Jack goes straight to the point. Luckily, Tony is in it for the money and they bargain for the information. They agree on the price and Tony drives them to the location. The smugglers arrive at a checkpoint and they let everyone out to use the washroom before heading out again. Suddenly, Yazid shows up at the checkpoint and starts looking for them in the washroom. He finds the daughters, but Hanan hits him with a rock and he falls in the pond of pee and poop. Then they run away, and once they are far enough, they walk to the coast direction. During the drive, Tony gets a call and he informs them an incident happened in one of the checkpoints with a woman they may be looking for. When they arrive to the checkpoint, Tony asks about Hanan and they find out they left after escaping Yazid. Yazid heads to the coast while Tony takes a shortcut to the coast. A gate was blocking the shortcut, so Tony bargains with the guards. The guards were asking for too much, so Tony killed them. Jack starts beating Tony after he was shit-talking about Hanan, so James had to stop the fight and order them around. Kathy, on the other hand, is swamped with the Ebola case because EVD-27 should have been eradicated and emails the higher-ups about it. Later, Dr. Sheen tells Kathy how the man got Ebola and how the 2 Easter men paid him for it. After the call, Kathy emails the higher-ups to immediately review the findings. Hanan and the kids arrive at the coast and they sneak into the line to board the raft. Yazid is there on the lookout and spots them. Before taking action, he asks for Suleiman's orders. Jack and the others arrive to look for Hanan, but Yazid gets some men to prevent Hanan from getting onto the raft. The men separate Hanan and her children and brought Hanan to Yazid.
Jack sees the commotion and they rush over to help her. Yazid uses Hannon as a hostage while Tony tries to calm everyone down. Tony makes a deal with the leader, but they only get Hannon and not her daughters. Jack doesn't like the deal, but James takes it. When they take the kids away, Yazid gives them Hannon and James shoots Yazid right in the head. Then they have another standoff while Tony tries to calm it down again. Jack goes to the family to bring them to a safe place, and when they are in the car, James gets Jack to pay Tony. Once they are on the army base, Jack wants to know what Suleiman is up to, but Hannon doesn't know. Jack brings up Samir and he will do whatever he can to reunite them, but she will need to give up Suleiman's location. She gives Jack the location and he promises to try his best to get Samir. Jack brings the information to James, but before he could tell him, James tells him what happened in Karachi and how Jack needs to compromise to get the mission done. Jack doesn't believe he needs to compromise, but that was James's mindset before he changed. Jack returns back to the office the next day after setting up Hannon's family in a safe house, and JSOC is working on a tactical assault plan to hit Suleiman's compound. The assault team does a practice run and Hannon helps prepare them. They have a meeting on using airstrikes to take out Suleiman, but Jack wants to use ground troops because they have many people spread out and they have no clue what their plans are. Bobby doesn't want a ground strike unless they know Suleiman is there. At the hospital, Kathy meets with Sergeant Grant, who wants to ask her some questions, and he has a car ready to pick her up. After the meeting, Tarek briefs them on what he found in Liberia with a photo of Ali and Suleiman together. James remembers CTC Africa was discussing an Ebola-infected corpse that went missing, and they went to that meeting. At the meeting, Kathy is briefing the army, and they show up to join the meeting. Then they ask Kathy if Suleiman could weaponize Ebola. She thinks it's possible to weaponize Ebola, and that shocks everyone. After the meeting, Jack chases after Kathy because she feels betrayed due to Jack having to lie about his job. Back in Syria, Suleiman tells Samir Hannon has died because of the West, but his sisters will be returning. Suleiman promises to get revenge for Hannon and will strike them back harder. Suleiman messages Yazid to message him through the game, and Daniel is brought to Suleiman so he can give Daniel the things he asked for. Daniel passes the vitamins and antibiotics to everyone, including their previous captor. Abraham opens up a container and gears up to move the chemical products. He finds out one of them is leaking, so he leaves it behind. Maribel brings supplies to the safe house and gives Sarah a gaming device. Sarah uses the game to let Samir know Hannon is still alive. Suleiman walks in, so Samir acts asleep, and Suleiman checks the game to see the messages. James calls Jack to the CIA because they identified Suleiman in the compound and the hostages are there too. So President Pickett gets them to send in ground troops for the mission. Before they end the meeting, Jack wants to save Samir because Hannon gave the location up and President Pickett agreed to rescue Samir too. Everyone gathers at the CIA office to watch the mission commence. Mattis breaches the door and they start their assault mission. When they were clearing each room, no one was found, so they rescued the hostages. Mattis wanted to check a tunnel, but getting the hostages out was the priority. They collected all their things for evidence and left the compound. Close to the Turkish border was Suleiman's group with Canadian passports, and they get picked up by a driver. At the office, they find it weird Suleiman would give the hostages vitamins, and Tarek gives James shredded newspaper with Daniel and President Pickett together. Later, Jack invites Kathy out to give her an explanation to figure out their relationship. Kathy wants to continue their relationship, and when they were talking, Jack gets a call from James. Jack notices the hostages were the biological weapons after watching the news. So they move President Pickett and the congressman to the hospital to be quarantined. Jack has a dream when he was in the Marines and wakes up from it. He goes out to review notes and Kathy wonders if he's okay. Jack tells her about the helicopter crash. They were extracting a family from the Taliban and a kid begged to be brought along because he was an orphan. So Jack brought him on board, but the kid was a S-bomber, killing everyone but Jack. Kathy thanks Jack for sharing his story with her. Suleiman arrives at Leesburg, Virginia, and they are able to get through immigration. At the cargo factory, a man notices a bin open, so he checks it out. Inside, he finds a blue powder substance. Later, he goes to the hospital to get help but passes out before getting aid. Back at the office, they are briefed about a man suffering from radiation poisoning and the men who are behind it. They could potentially kill hundreds of thousands with what they got, so they start researching where they could cause the most damage. Jack thinks they aren't trying to kill a bunch of people because he thinks they have a multi-step plan. At the hospital, Kathy checks President Pickett's condition, and he seems to be doing fine. Abraham demonstrates a remote detonator and lets Suleiman test fire it. Suleiman promises to Samir once this is done, he will get the family back together. Later, Abraham goes to a busy pizzeria and leaves a bag behind. When he walks out, he detonates a bomb, causing an explosion. Jack and James go to the pizzeria, but Jack doesn't get it because he only killed 30 people compared to 300 people at the church. Then Jack notices they might be targeting the hospital where President Pickett is staying, so they go to the hospital. Suleiman gears up and they go around the hospital to a quiet place so they can remove the chemicals from the dead bodies to set up the bomb. They go to the air vents and set up the detonator. Once they finish, they leave the hospital. Jack informs them the pizzeria might be a distraction and they are probably targeting the hospital. Jack continues to contact Kathy, but he can't because they jam the cell tower, so no one can remotely detonate a bomb, and then they split up to look for Suleiman. Kathy checks her phone and sees Jack's warnings. She talks to the higher-ups and doesn't like what she hears, so she pulls the fire alarm. Suleiman's group split off from each other because they spot guards looking for them. When James was walking up the stairs, he saw one of them and he chased after him. The men get into an elevator with Kathy and it closed on James. James meets them on a lower floor and he ends the guy. When Jack was searching, he heard gunshots, so he followed behind. Suleiman is outside trying to detonate the bomb, but nothing happens. Samir sees him and starts waving, but the police stop them. The guy tries to shoot the police, but they shot first, ending the guy. Samir stares at Suleiman, but he waves Samir off, but Jack sees Samir staring, so he goes that way. Jack shoots at Suleiman, but he was too far to hit him, and he chases after them to the subway. They go into the tunnels and they have a shootout. Luckily, Jack was able to find cover and shoot one of them. A train came, killing one of them, but that gave Suleiman time to run away, so Jack took a shortcut. In a crowded place, Jack shouted he has his son in his language and got Suleiman's attention. Jack gives a warning shot and everyone ducks while Suleiman runs away, but it gave Jack the opportunity to end Suleiman. Jack retrieves the phone and ends the crisis. James congratulates Jack on finishing the mission and they joke around afterwards. The next day, Jack brings Samir to Hannon and they reunite with each other. 4 months later in Morocco, we see Mattis on a mission and he hears someone coming in. That person was Abraham and he gets suspicious, but Mattis ends him on the spot. At the CIA headquarters, James packs up his things to go to Moscow to be the deputy of chief of station there, and Jack congratulates him. Later, Jack is called to Nate's office so he can be promoted to James's position. Before James left, he left Jack a plane ticket to Moscow. Well, that ends it for Jack Ryan Season 1. If you want Season 2, comment Moscow. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe, and thanks for watching.